Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eduardo Molina, and I am the director of the Smart Workspace practice here at Cortec. And today I am in good company. Josh, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Eduardo. Good afternoon. Josh Travers here from Rimo3. I hold the field CTO position at Rimo3, and today we're going to walk through the Rimo3 automation capability as it relates to Cortec's Windows 11 and overall workspace practice. So thanks again for having me, Eduardo.
Appreciate it. So with that said, let's start getting into the presentation. From an agenda perspective, we're going to start talking about Cortec a little bit. Then why application modernization is important. We have Josh to do a live demo, so everybody's going to be able to see this, actually through a live demo. So hopefully our demo guys will be with us. And then how can Cortec help you? And we finish with a Q&A. So without further ado, let's start talking about a little bit about a Cortec. So who is Cortec? Cortec is the #1 Azure cloud provider in the United States. We have earned our class reputation by partnering with our customers and solving complex business challenges. We leverage Microsoft and other strategic partner solutions through our high-performance consulting, security, and managed services teams. We are, what you see in the screen is the pics of some of our customers. So we're a nationwide organization, highly awarded. We have a lot of different compliances like a Microsoft Azure, Expert MSP, ISO 27001, SOC 2, and we also hold several Microsoft Advanced specializations, including modern work and security, which are over important for us. We divide our offerings in 5 different areas. Everything starts with security. There is no secret that last 3-4 years has been very, very intense with security breaches and things of that nature. So we start everything with security and a mindset. We applied AI for transformation. We help people through things like Microsoft Copilot. We have a different webinar on that, but we can talk about that in a little bit. Our cloud team, the practice that I am honored to lead, which is the workspace practice, and then we grab everything with managed services. From an approach perspective, our smart workspace, we have 4 main areas where we can review what we do. We start with the M365 solution set and security. We help organizations through the adoption and realization of E3 and E5. We help organizations around Intune and Autopilot and everything modern management, which is one of the main areas that we will be talking about today. We help to protect organizations and give visibility through things like Defender and Purview and Sentinel, as well as help organizations with Microsoft OneDrive, Microsoft Copilot. On mergers and acquisitions or identity management, we help through not only mergers and acquisitions, but complex migrations. We have helped organizations that have grown through acquisitions to consolidate into a single identity, to consolidate multiple different tenants, whether those are SharePoint tenants or Office 365 tenants into a single one. Entra ID governance, help organizations to automate, which is another word that you're going to hear today a lot, in the automation of the onboarding and offboarding, not only of the devices, what we're talking about in our Autopilot, but also the onboarding and offboarding on identities and users with integrations on things like Workday and ServiceNow. And finally, we work around the endpoints. The endpoints are important, and the endpoints are everywhere, right? Whether we're looking at around physical or virtual, we look through the lens of digital employee experience. It's super important for everybody to understand what your end user, what your consumer, what your employee is feeling, and how are they engaged within the organization. So digital employee experience is something that is on top of mind for CEOs and CIOs alike today. We help with the adoption of AVD and Windows 365. We help organizations to understand the difference between the two and when one is, better than the other. In this hybrid world, that is another, buzzword that you're hearing a lot. Sometimes might be AVD, sometimes might be a laptop on premises, sometimes might be a thin client that is connected into a Windows 365. We have a solution called the clinical workflows for our healthcare customers. And then we help to define the security around the edge device. And as I mentioned in our previous slide, we provide managed services across all those areas, starting with something that we call the unified security, which is an end-to-end solution where we're not only helping with the delivery of that endpoint through the unified device, but the unified security provides access to a SOC SIEM. We're going to be protecting, but we're going to be reviewing and investigating and providing support in case of something going wrong. With that, let's start talking about why app modernization. Windows 11 is here. Windows 10, for those that don't know, it's on its current last version, which is known as Windows 10 22H2. That has been declared by Microsoft as the last version of Windows 10 that will be released due to the expiration of support in October 2025 by Microsoft, which means that every organization should be planning or should be starting to plan on how to migrate from Windows 10 to Windows 11. Based on some websites that you guys can find this information on the internet, it is thought that about 80% of workstations out there at enterprise are still running Windows 10. On Windows 11, it's a good option, but it provides some challenges, right? Some of the good things is it has better security at the software level and also at the hardware level, improves performance, provides better integration with Intune. It does have a new look with some of our customers have considered that as a challenge because now things are not, the start menu is not what it used to be, and it tends to be a little bit different. It does help us with MSIX app attach, which comes into the part of modern management. But the biggest challenge we have seen is that business applications have compatibility issues. So as part of those compatibility issues, organizations that are planning their move to Windows 11, whether it's AVD to Windows 11 or migrating from existing on-premises implementations of Windows 10 to Windows 365 that is running Windows 11, or Windows 11 on its own from physical to physical, it's an area where we can provide you with services and we can provide you with a consultative approach on the planning and the execution. And most importantly is, how do you guarantee that those 1,000 different packages that you might have today in your SCCM environment or other packaging tools are going to be working correctly once you move to Windows 11? Josh, anything you want to add around the Windows 11 approach?
No, I don't think so. I think you've listed the the main drivers there. The one takeaway I get from whenever I see the list of why Windows 11 is that it's clear that there's many different ways to consume Windows 11, and you mentioned those, right? Whether it's going from physical to physical to VDI, perhaps a hybrid solution. And then once we boil down the application permutations, from what my takeaway is the complexity can add up quickly when looking to move a lot of workspaces from one place to another.
Perfect. And as the perfect segue for what Josh mentioned is, how do you manage those hybrid environments, right? And that's the approach of modern management, right? Modern management help us to provide a comprehensive approach to manage everything in your environment, whether we're talking about physical Windows, Windows 365, Mac OS, iOS, or Android. you want to have that consistent, secure, and unified way of managing. It also, modern management enables to be more efficient, right? You don't have to be in 3, 4 different consoles, one for your cloud-based VDI, once for your on-premises environment, once for your on-premises device, or your corporate-owned devices. It's important to have that cohesive, single approach, single overarching solution that will help your IT security team to see where you stand. Provide us that hybrid approach, right? Whatever that endpoint is, or whatever that OS is running, we have full visibility. And it's modern management that starts at its core with Intune, the deployment of Intune, and its integration with Autopilot. And then it gets extended when we talk about call management, or MECM, right, which is the integration of Intune and the traditional SCCM environments. We consider the simple process to modern management by first, we need to define a process to deploy and provision devices, to integrate the identity and authentication into that device with your main source, Entra ID, formerly known as Azure AD. And then, very, very important for this presentation, is the continuous configuration, updating, and servicing, right? Windows 11 is not going to be like, hey, you deploy version 23H2 and then you stay at that version, right? There's going to be new versions. And how do you ensure that your application continue to perform, continue to work once you move from one version to another, once you deploy a set of patches? That is part of what modern management should be able to enforce. And as I mentioned, applications are actually the biggest obstacle to modern management, right? 5 applications is what we consider on a traditional click next, let me reset that VM to factory default so I can deploy the next package. It is the average that can be tested by a single individual per day. When you have to do the creation of the package and the testing and the deployment, that actually get reduced to even lower, which means that then you're consuming a lot more money into that endpoint management, into that application management, into that application testing. And not, when we talk to Microsoft, they said there's a lot of compatibility and a lot of applications that are native compatibility with Windows 11, but a lot of those applications are the traditional, Microsoft, CAN applications like Word, Excel, or M365. When we talked about business critical applications, there are some statistics that show about 30% of those applications might fail when they are being, pushed or managed through a modern management environment that has not taken the necessary steps to ensure that everything works. And how we get there to reduce this complexity is through automation, right? Automation is everywhere. It's another of those 2023, 2024 buzzwords, right? Microsoft has really, really embraced the idea of automation. They have Copilot for everything, right? Copilot for security, Copilot for Power BI, Copilot for M365. We're always going to talk to our customers about infrastructure as code. We're always going to talk about, the automation of onboarding. And I just talk about, Entra ID governance, onboarding and offboarding users, provisioning the devices on an automated way with Autopilot. So automation is around everybody. It's going to help organizations to optimize their internal resources, which means that we're also going to be able to provide better consistency and scalability. And because we now have more scalable resources, they can increase their productivity because they can focus on the value added to the business, right? Well, it's very important that we create the right package to deploy an application. The value added is not on deploying that package, right? The value added is not on deploying, making sure that the next version of that package gets done in 20 minutes. It's being a liaison with the business to understand what the challenges are. And hey, maybe they want to replace this application A with application B, and helping IT, helping the organization to realize whether or not that's the right direction. That's where the value added is. So it will also help to reduce the operational cost. And automation of packaging, it requires not just, hey, how do I take an MSI and transform it into an MSIX for app attach, but it's the creation, the testing, the validation of changes, right? And those validation of changes is, hey, I moved from version 11.1 to 11.2, but also the validation of we just deployed patches on Tuesday. Is that going to break anything? And by having an automation process, it will help us to increase the employee experience. And we go back to my first slide where I talked about DEX being very, very, very important for us. And here is where when I looked at automation from a packaging, from a modern management, that's what Rimo3 has a very unique proposition for us. And let's move to that proposition. So what's the journey from legacy to modern, right? Everybody starts with applications that are currently, deployed via things like, SCCM and the scripts and MSIs or regular scripts. We can then import that, and we're going to dig really, really deep in this in the next couple of slides. But, we onboard that application, we build it, and we test that application against your own operating system, not a random operating system. We make sure that everything is working the way we want, easily on your current build. And once we have that, we define what your desired state is. In this case, we can be talking about Windows 10 is my current build, and I move into a Windows 11. Then we observe things that fail, we remediate, and that's where the human intervention, that's where the value added. Let's assume we have 1,000 packages, we run it through the process, and only 10 of them or only 20 of them fail. That's when the human intervention, the value added comes into place, so we can quickly resolve the issues for those 10 versus having to go manually through 1,000. And for those that pass with no problem, or once they pass with no problem, we can deploy as is, right? Meaning, hey, continue to use SCCM, continue to use your packaging solution or your deployment solution as is, or let's modernize by using things like MSIX or Intune packages. And then you might be thinking, hey, how is it the magic happening here? What is the overall infrastructure that we need? Josh, I will let you talk to this next slide on the high-level cloud architecture that Rimo3 brings into the scenario here.
Sure. So for those that aren't familiar, Rimo3 is a software platform. It's native to Microsoft Azure. However, we do have a SaaS PaaS deployment method where Rimo3 deploys inside of our customers' Azure tenants. And that's what we're seeing here with an outgoing only communication. So Rimo3 can host and maintain the web services and some of the other supporting functionality. But the important takeaway is that all resources are deployed within inside of our customers' Azure tenants. And there's many reasons for this. It's the most efficient way to consume compute when we're doing full automation and orchestration. However, it also maintains compliancy, meaning that no applications ever leave the premise. And that's, security, Eduardo had noted it at the beginning, security is on the forefront of most. And by operating and orchestrating all of the resources that are contained within, that secure tenant, that allows us to achieve a consistency. The entire deployment is automated via the Azure Microsoft Marketplace. So it is a quick, fast, lightweight deployment, but it is also a flexible deployment where we can adhere to, any DevOps or Terraform processes that might be in place, as well as any existing connectivity, which you're seeing on the far right for on-premise resources, to integrate with SCCM or to have line of sight through ExpressRoute or traditional VPNs to supporting infrastructure that may exist on-prem today that applications need to either install or function. And that's what we mean by that flexible deployment. But as you can see, it's a couple resources that get provisioned. And then, the automation shines by automatically orchestrating all of the different components that we'll walk through in more detail shortly.
Perfect. Important here, right, as Josh just mentioned, that right-hand side means that, hey, if you have packages on premises, if you have, packages that are on file servers or your SCCM repository, you will be able to integrate with those. I want to remind everybody, we're jumping right now into the demo part, right? Josh is going to take us through it, and he's going to explain. In the meantime, we have the live Q&A going, and we will be monitoring those questions and addressing those questions at the end. So please feel free to ask any questions. All righty, Josh.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you. So what I'd like to do is just spend 5 minutes here and unpack the Rimo3 automated application pipeline. If you look at Rimo3 as a software platform, you boil it down to its core competencies. It's a very robust automation and orchestration engine. And what we're doing with the Rimo3 technology is we're making it as flexible as possible so that our customers can configure it for their desired outcomes, right? And we'll touch on that in more detail, but we always start off with the applications themselves. As Eduardo had mentioned, these are the existing Windows apps that are under management. Most commonly we see SCCM or Configuration Manager. That's an optional integration that Rimo3 offers. And the purpose of that is to streamline the importing of those packages. And that's exactly what we want to do, is we want to import all of those packages at scale, whether that's 100, 1,000 to 10,000, make it as easy as possible to import those. Once we do import those, this is where the unattended automation initiates. And the first process is a Rimo3 discovery execution. This is where Rimo3 starts to understand the constructs of each and every application it brings into the platform, effectively reverse engineering it, extracting out the DNA using your current environment to understand exactly how that application is going to interact with the Windows operating system. And Rimo3 then stores those constructs as a data profile. Once that discovery process completes, Rimo3 then automatically executes that discovered data against a functional build or builds that you're maintaining in your environment today. We'll use a Windows 10 build for this example, but again, through the unattended automation, meaning no human interaction, the ability to do it at scale, Rimo3 is building intelligence during the discovery phase of all of the application packages, and then executing that data against a functional build. And we're not doing it at this point to understand if the application is compatible or not. Our customers already know this because this is the functional builds that they're supporting for tens of thousands of users. Why we're doing it at this phase of the unattended automation is this is what trains Rimo3 of what good looks like. So we're expecting a successful outcome here by ways of installation, functionality, and we're going to baseline the performance. And once we've captured this for the applications that we're importing, we've effectively and successfully onboarded the applications. And that, comparatively speaking, is Rimo3's secret sauce. The ability with no human interaction to understand the constructs of the applications, execute those constructs, and capture that successful profile. Now, once that's done, the next phase of the automation becomes very simple and you're positioned very strongly. We're going to use Windows 11 today and ongoing management of Windows 11, as well as package modernization. And the three boxes that just built out there, that's a representation of the different types of outcomes you can configure with the Rimo3 automated pipeline. And because we have all of the applications now in a digital profile that's extremely agile, we quickly point towards what these new future end states are, and we execute those same constructs, and we're able to derive a result. So for example, what we can do is now we can run all of our applications at scale, leveraging compute against our Windows 11 build. At the same time, take those same legacy application packages and assess them for modern package formats, such as MSIX or Intune Win, etc. And out of those successful formats, actually package those up. The only way for Rimo3 to assess once we talk about package modernization is to actually attempt the modernization underneath the hood of our automated platform. And that's exactly what we're doing. We've baked in the Microsoft native tools for best of practice. But what you'll see here is a very quick result, right? Whether it's again on the operating system, whether it's on that package modernization, we're able to generate those results in a fraction of the time you can do this, comparatively speaking, which is manual effort or human interaction. Then once we've understood the data results on the operating systems, we've understood the results of those packages and what can be modernized, what can't, that's when we can then offer the automated export to your preferred management plane. Whether it's Microsoft Intune, whether it's Nerdio Manager for Enterprise, for AVD, right? Citrix environments with their DAS offering. At Rimo3, our entire strategy is to meet our customers, where they are, and how we're doing that is providing this flexible application platform. Now, there is that other piece with the continuous, management, right? If I am, moving from 10 to 11, how do I maintain? Well, within Rimo3, you can leverage the same automation capabilities because, again, it all goes down to that onboarding pipeline. Once we have that representation and that intelligence, every time that workspace should change, whether that is physical, virtual, a Microsoft update, an internal update via configuration profile, GPO, security update. Again, it really doesn't matter. What we do is we update that environment and then point Rimo3 to it to rinse and repeat the analysis.
That is awesome, Josh. And I believe we have a live demo where you're going to actually walk through this process. Is that correct?
That is. I'll go ahead
Awesome.
and take over sharing if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Perfect.
Let me know if you can see my screen. Fantastic. So let's jump right into the technology. And as I mentioned, the Rimo3 entry point is always the applications. We always gravitate towards the existing management plane like configuration management or configuration manager because that's the path of least resistance, right? It's a simple out-of-the-box integration, and we can import the entire app repository. However, if you're not using SCCM or there are additional applications that reside outside of SCCM, that's fine. Rimo3 provides a variety of import mechanisms, but we want to first and foremost import those applications. Now, after that happens, as I mentioned, this is where the unattended automation starts to initiate. And the first phase is that discovery phase where we start to understand the constructs of the application. And that's exactly what you're looking at here is the results of a successful discovery that has been completed. And what this process entails is effectively Rimo3 trying to extract as many data points from the application package as it possibly can to start to build that intelligence profile. So what we can see here is we're pulling out the metadata to help with application versioning for your rationalization exercises. We're pulling out manufacturer details, and then also the installation logic. Again, we're going to need to have to automatically install this application either to package it or to test it on a different workspace. So capturing that installation logic just increases that robustness of the automation. However, then we start to get down into the interworkings of the application. And here we start to identify all of the entry points of these Windows apps by ways of the executables because we need a starting place. Then what we do is we look for shortcuts that are automatically included within that package. And here in this example, very common application has a large amount of different executables. However, there's a smaller subset of shortcuts indicating that that's the entry point of the core functionality of the application. And then we'll start to catalog and register any service information. And if we can discover this at a minimum, this is enough to initiate the next phase of the automation. And this is truly what makes Rimo3 a dynamic approach to these automation capabilities. And I use the word dynamic is because, one, we did not make any assumptions about this application. There was no scripts or configuration done. The ability for Rimo3 to determine that this is, an Adobe application, and we need to verify, or the entry points are this Acrobat exe as well as this Distiller exe, are happening on the fly through that intelligent automation. So we capture this data and then we store it, as I mentioned, in that dynamic profile. Then once we have that, we automatically progress the application to the next phase, which is that baseline analysis phase. And here, what you can see is this is where we start to execute those data points to capture the results. And we're anticipating a successful result here. But if you draw your attention down, and I'm doing this on a functional Windows 10 build that I support in production today, but here what you'll see is we're automatically provisioning the virtual environment based off of your custom builds, which is very important because, as Eduardo had mentioned, we can look at whitelists or do static analysis, but that's assuming that it's a COTS application that hasn't been packaged and it's running against a vanilla OS. What Rimo3 provides is the ability to take your packaged applications, custom or off the shelf, and then execute those and learn from your current configuration sets of your OS build. From our experience, if there is a compatibility issue, the majority of the time it happens on the configuration set or a policy that lives in the operating system, not necessarily the application package. So we spin up that virtual environment, we install the application, and then we start to execute and enter that application based off of what we've discovered. Now, it's doing a lot more than the traditional smoke test would dictate. If you're not familiar, it's install, launch, and uninstall. Here within Rimo3, what you'll see is that we're only using the executables as an entry point, and then we're following those executables as far as they will take us. As we all know that are familiar with apps, executables can be doing one of many, many things within inside that operating system. So, for example, if it launches a child process, we'll go ahead and follow it down and start to capture those results of the child process. Rimo3 even includes single action click or single click actions to recognize dialog boxes. I agree, finish. Again, our purpose is to extend and to collect as much data as possible. This is also what makes it dynamic. We're going to have a unique test or validation case for each and every application, depending on how that application was written and how it's going to interact with that Windows operating system. And then we can optionally validate the uninstallation of the application and then automatically deprovision that virtual environment to maximize compute. Now, outside of the log level, which app nerds like myself love to gravitate to, we're also recording the entire automation as well. So our customers can go and replay this back on demand, as well as taking static screenshots when activity happens. And this is, this consumable formats allows us to tailor to a wide audience. And, Eduardo from the Cortex standpoint can say, a lot of the times when we're engaged in joint engagements, the audience differs on who needs to digest this information. Of course, if it's going back to the packaging team or the development team, they're going to want the robust data. However, if it's going to an application business owner, they may prefer a visual representation of what's happening as well. Outside of the deployment, the functional testing, Rimo3 is also capturing key performance metrics. Now, we're capturing these performance metrics to provide comparative analysis. In our demonstration today, we're going from a Windows 10 environment that we're familiar with to an unknown build in a Windows 11 environment. What we're doing is during the Windows 10 analysis, we're capturing key performance metrics, we're storing those as data within that data profile to, again, train Rimo3 on this is what should happen when these activities occur. Then what you'll see is once we move to that new desired state, we're going to capture the same performance metrics and compare those to answer a very difficult question through the result of automation. If I'm going to take this app and move it from Windows 10 to Windows 11, is there an impact on my performance? And if there is it positive? Is it negative? Let me drill in and find out more. So I typically like to spend a lot of time on that onboarding process because, again, that is the competitive differentiator between Rimo3. Once we're able to successfully onboard these applications, we can now, for lack of a better term, choose our own adventure based off of what our outcomes are. And what we're doing is we're configuring the automation pipeline to be able to support those outcomes. So the first area that I'll touch is that Windows 11, right? And I'll go into the results here. And if you recall from that PowerPoint build out, what we've done is I've already preloaded a custom build of Windows 11, and I've rinsed and repeat the analysis. And I can very quickly start to understand how my application estate is going to deploy and function as well as perform on Windows 11. And that's exactly what we're viewing here, where, always gravitate towards the success. In a fraction of the time, I'm able to determine 92% of my existing application estate is going to pass. That's fantastic. I can now accelerate 92% of my application estate to the next phase in your application lifecycle. And that may be a facilitated UAT process for a subset. It may be to leverage the Rimo3 out-of-the-box integrations to export those directly to Microsoft Intune. Now, on the flip side of that, I can just as quickly start to understand where my risk is by ways of the failure. And how Rimo3 can quickly come to this conclusion is because of that onboarding baseline. We know what success already looks like by way of data. So then when that deviates, we can quickly drill in and start to understand where in the process. This particular failure wasn't even able to install within that Windows 11 environment. So again, I can capture the code and I can come back and replay the video to truly understand in a fraction of the time how to proceed with this application, right? Is it can I remediate it? Is it an installation packaging problem, a functionality problem? Is it a third-party app? I can go back to the vendor and get an updated, or do I simply need to take this out of scope and retire it? These are all very good questions. And what Rimo3 is providing is, through automation, the ability to answer those via data-driven decisions, informed decision-making on your application estate. Now, the other piece, and when it comes to the application, analysis on the desired state, it becomes pretty binary at that point. It's going to succeed and fail. Again, the value there is to do this at scale and do it in the fraction of the time. The other piece that we mentioned during that pipeline is I also wanted to assess my applications on a modern application packaging format. We work with customers all the time that are exploring VDI solutions such as AVD, MSIX App Attach, or they simply want to modernize their legacy app estate to universal lines of business apps within Intune or an additional management plane. Rimo3, again, can automate that. And what I'm doing here is I'm just telling it what package format I would like it to go. And then I can go in and I can select all or a subset based off of my project and go ahead and click submit. Now, what happens behind the scenes is Rimo3 is going to leverage that same automation and orchestration engine to go through and determine what applications are good candidates and what applications aren't, and then provide those data results. So here, there's a couple different scenarios from a high level. Is one, we clearly can identify out of our application scope where our risk is, right? What apps just simply won't convert to our preferred modern application format, and start to categorize those, export, report on those, understand truly why they are failing. Then there's the scenario of when we get into package modernization, it's a two-step process. That first step is to get it into that new format. The second step is to validate that once it's in that new format, it's going to function and perform as you would expect it to in your environments. And that's what we're seeing here. For example, this application, it was able to convert into MSIX, no problem. However, it's failing on the post-conversion validation. And that's an extra step that Rimo3 includes automatically. Is one, is it'll verify that it can get into that format. And then two, take that net new format and run that analysis against it. And here we can see that just because we can containerize it does not necessarily mean that it can function. Then what we're able to do, the best of all worlds, is then clearly and very quickly understand not only what applications can be modernized, but which ones will also work once they have been modernized. And from there, as I mentioned before, the only way for Rimo3 to provide this data is to actually do the heavy lifting of all of the packaging underneath the hood of our platform. And that's exactly what we're doing with the MSIX packaging tool or VMware app volumes or the native Intune wrapping utilities. So that we stay again in best practice. It also suits or positions Rimo3 as that packaging technology evolves over time. Rimo3 evolves in lockstep with it. So the net end result of a successfully converted as well as that validated package is you have a package ready to go. And this is where we offer the ability then to export those applications out in their preferred format. So whether it's to Intune, to Nerdio, you can retrieve these manually, or you can pull those down directly with the API. It's all about that flexibility in the automated pipeline that Rimo3 has provided. So we talked about two key things that are very common in my daily life, right? It's the ability to, leverage automation to assess, point A to point B of the current application estate. And then as we're assessing that, we're also assessing the applications for, modern package formats. The last thing that I'll talk about is how do we then leverage Rimo3's automation and orchestration engine to maintain those environments over time. Now, I'll kind of start at a very high level. The two occurrences of change are going to be one on the application front, meaning net new applications are going to be introduced into the environment. Updates of existing applications are going to be introduced in the environment. And that's fine. The answer is pretty simple within Rimo3. We just go directly back to that step one through that onboarding phase, and we understand that application. It now comes under management like any other app. The more frequent occurrence of change, at least from our data and our customers, is the workspaces that these applications are being deployed to. And what you'll see here is a management workspace, and you'll see a wide variety of applications indicated here, including the applications that we've just modernized in the last phase of our automation cycle. Rimo3 will take those MSIXs or those AppVols packages and include those under management alongside with their source app Vs or their source MSIs and things of that nature as well. Now, as this operating system or this workspace evolves, what happens is that image gets updated. And then what we do is we just point Rimo3 to what that newly updated image looks like, and then define your version of update here. As I mentioned, updates or changes come in many different shapes and sizes, whether it's a Microsoft Windows update, your own internal security posture update, GPOs, configuration profiles, you name it. The list goes on and on. Point being is that we can update those images leveraging the Azure ecosystem, and then point Rimo3 towards what those new images should look like. Click go, and it's going to rinse and repeat at scale all of the analysis. And it's going to be able to determine again very quickly that any change you made to that workspace, if there will be impact to those applications, regardless of the application format. And again, many different outcomes, whether that's VDI or traditional physical application delivery. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause there. I know I probably threw a lot at the audience very quick for the interest of time, but Eduardo, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add or if there's any questions, but I'll go ahead and take a pause.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good, Josh. That's a very, very, very thoughtful demo, and I think a lot of us enjoyed it. In essence of time, I'm gonna take it over to go to our last couple of slides and then address a couple of the questions that we received while you were doing the demo. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Perfect. So let me share. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, you're live.
Awesome. So how can we help, right? So there are multiple ways that Corte can help you in this journey. The first one, I'm very excited to announce, we can provide you with Rimo3 as a service, meaning that we will talk to you and we will define the number of packages and what we're going to do, and we're going to give you that as a service where we can be constantly running this for you, on a price per package that we do. We can also do the traditional licensing, implementation and application packaging services for you. Also, for organizations that might be thinking, okay, what if I need to leverage Rimo3 to help us, as Josh mentioned, to move from physical endpoints to virtual endpoints, because they might not want to. Windows 11 might not work, right? Don't have a TPM chip, but you're not interested on migrating or replacing the hardware, right? We can do the whole licensing for M365, E3, E5 Copilot as through our CSP program. We can help you to modernize and manage those endpoints, through Intune, through Autopilot. Give you the end-to-end full management, right, from procurement to retirement of the device. We can also offer that. Do the implementation of your AVD and M365 and Windows 365 environments, and very importantly, Windows Copilot readiness assessment, right? Everybody's talking about Microsoft 365 Copilot. We can help you on that end, and also very new offering is around the digital employee experience, right? Trying to help you to understand how are your employees doing, not only how's your VDI environment performing, but hey, how's the connectivity when somebody's working from home? What's the level of performance you're getting from that user that is working from afar? And with that, let's jump due to the time, in a couple questions that we have received, Josh, if you don't mind.
Sure.
The first one is, hey, you talked a lot about MSI, but can you convert AppV into MSIX or Win32 or Intune?
Great question. I'm guessing it's someone that sees the AppV end of life looming. The answer is yes, absolutely. Rimo3 natively supports AppV in all facets of its automation, so no additional bits or bytes need to be installed or configured. We can ingest those, understand those, and then convert those either to Windows 32 or MSIX.
That is fantastic. And there's another very interesting question that says, hey, can Rimo3 integrate on multiple Intune instances? But before you answer, right, one of the things I mentioned at the beginning is, hey, Cortex, through our complex migration teams, we can actually help you to consolidate multiple Intune environments, multiple SharePoint Online or Exchange Online environments into one. But if you're still on that journey and it's not a priority for you right now, can Rimo3 integrate with multiple Intune instances?
Yeah, I agree. Another great question, and it can. And I think the more important part is the Cortex and the services aligned with Rimo3 is that to have that initial assessment or that trusted advisor, is multiple instances required, or is there opportunity to consolidate? Either or, based off requirements, Rimo3 does have the support built in out of the box, because we do see that from time to time.
Perfect. And in our last question that we have today comes from terms of automation. Hey, you guys talked a lot about automation. Are there any APIs type of integration to leverage even more automation out of the box?
So yes, absolutely there are. Rimo3 is an API first development shop. We do provide a RESTful API. So all of the functionality that we reviewed during the demonstration today can all be executed via the RESTful API. All of the data that Rimo3 is capturing can also be extracted via the API as well. Some very common use cases for the Rimo API is one, extracting the data to go into a more enterprise reporting strategy, the Tableaus of the worlds, the Power BIs, simply to complement with other with other data sources. The other very common integration is through our customers' ITSM platforms. We're seeing a big shift now, and finally, which I'm very excited for, where traditional Windows management and Windows application landscapes are now starting to adopt a CI/CD mentality. And it really does start with that existing service management, where we can fully integrate, whether it's service request, change enablement, and start to automate the automation capabilities of Rimo3. So great question.
Perfect. I think we're gonna pause it there due to the time. We're approaching the top of the hour, and I just wanna say thank you, Josh, for your time and collaboration in this presentation. Say thank you to all the attendees. This is being recorded, so we're gonna share the recording out there, and we will share a link for you guys to have a download of these slides. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up, Josh?
No, just like to thank you and Cortec for providing the opportunity to talk about Rimo3 today. And again, thank you for all that attended.
Awesome. Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon, everybody. Thank you.